Alright, well, I've been sidetracked with a bunch of other stuff. I'm getting back on this Square Body C10. Most of the big stuff's done. I have to finish my tailpipes. Basically all my exhaust is built except for my over-the-axle rear pipes. The customer wants the tailpipes to come out straight behind the rear wheels. I'm going to tuck the pipes up tight against the bed of the truck in case he decides to lower this truck down the line. And then bring them out straight out the sides. I'll probably do a scarf cut on them, clean them up, and that'll be that part. Then it's down to some final wiring and plumbing items. I already have the fuel system plumbed. I already have the power steering plumbed. I have to plumb the AC. I have to plumb the heater core, which isn't a big deal. It's just a couple hoses. And wire the electric cooling fan. So that's where we're at with this one, and then we'll be firing it up. Get my pipe bender set up, and we will get to making some pretzels. I normally just freehand this stuff, but I have this and I thought I'd use it since I'm trying to make some symmetric pipes. Might as well use the tools you got, right? So I am an amateur tubing bender. I have basically self-taught myself everything I've done with this. Stuff tends to work out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the end products. So my customers typically. Try using this guy today. Because why not? Always time to learn how to use a new tool. Of course, the compressor just kicked on because it does that like it's its job. This guy screws it in. Allows me to get my orientation where I want it to be. Of course, it only works once. But it will get my bends where I want them to be, and or indexed to where I want them to be. If I want to make my bends more, then I can just lock back into them and bend them a little more. I'm going to do a bend at 16 inches to take up from the muffler. And then I'm going to do a bend 8 inches from there to bring it back down parallel with the bottom of the bed. And then I'm going to do a third bend bringing it down to get it underneath stuff behind the axle, and then I'll take it out and around the leaf spring. So this is a 7-foot, 2.5-inch pipe. We'll put a few bends into it and see if it works. If it works, then great. If it doesn't work, I'll get another piece of tube and try again, or I'll cut it and weld it back together if I have to, because I don't always make perfect bends. It is what it is. So, bend number 1 at 16. Take about 20 degrees. Looking for an 8-inch rise. I'm going to go 30 degrees. And I'm going to turn my stuff 180 over. So I'm going to do 30 again. 30 degrees. Gives me my rise. Back down. Probably leave that on there for now. Let's do a test fit. good. And I can just make my bend here and come straight out. Close enough for government work. This cross member probably will end up getting removed. Normally people remove this cross member and put a rear mounted tank right in that spot. Go ahead and put a bend in this. And this might be my pipe for this side. That was pretty painless. Then the trick is making the other one match. The other one I'm going to have to relocate this brake line to get it out of my way. Or bring the pipe down more and under it, but I like symmetry better, so I'll probably relocate this to make the pipes the same. Because I'm funny like that. That's pretty good. I think if I make my bend right there, 90 out, I think I'll be right where I want to be. So we're going to give that a shot. Try not to drop this on my stuff. Homemade exhaust is usually a function of fudge factors. It's never really perfect, but there's plenty of wiggle room to make things happen. I want to come out right behind this leaf spring. I'm going to initiate my bend just about there. Bring him out and straight, which should be pretty close to a 90-degree angle. Yeah. And even my gauge is showing right at 90 degrees, so we'll give that a shot. I'm going to go ahead and tack my muffler in so that I don't have to keep fighting with it. On it at about a 45-degree angle, which gives me a little bit of rise because I have an offset outlet. If any of you guys have tips on doing exhaust work, I'm open to listening to them. I'm always willing to learn new things. Always keep your options open. Because you never know when somebody who knows more than you do is going to come around and say, hey, you should try this. And you're like, man, that's an amazing idea. Tack this guy in. And then I'm going to hang this rear pipe from the side. Sometimes things are really frustrating. So I was working on the exhaust and then the muffler fell off. I fixed it. No big deal. I put it back up in there, welded her all in, and I'm sitting here looking at it and I'm like, wait a minute. My muffler's backwards. I put the inlet on the wrong side. Well, it's not that big of a tragedy. I'm just going to cut the muffler out and turn it around. Nothing else will really change. The inlet and outlet orientation is the same. It's just the muffler will be higher in the truck. That's what distractions do when you have a whole bunch of people walking around and trying to talk to you. This is why I do a lot of my work here at night when I'm alone, so that I'm not being interrupted every like 5 minutes. Hey Rich, take a look at this. Hey Rich, what do you think about this? I don't like being interrupted while I'm working. Whatever, I'll fix it. So since I screwed up, I will resolve the issue by using my chain cutter, and I will cut right next to the weld. Basically, then all I need to do is pull my muffler out, turn it around, orient it, and then I'll burn another bead right next to the weld that's already there. And then it'll just be me and anybody who watches this video that knows that that happened. So we'll cut her out and do it again. Sometimes you just gotta say, I am a dummy. And embrace your inner dummy. And then do it again. We all make mistakes. It's the people that don't admit they make mistakes. Those are the ones that scare me. Hey dummy, put it on the right way. Plug in our welder. Probably work better that way. Someday I'll get around to rewiring this side of the shop so that all my drops for my lifts are the same as the welder, so I can have my welder and my tubing bender plugged in at the same time. What's up, Austin?
Oh, finally getting ready to tighten.
That's welding like poo. Why am I not welding good? Oh, I know I'm not welding good. The ground's in the wrong spot. The fact that that was welding through insulated rubbers is impressive. I bet it welds better now though. Alright. I have my muffler on the correct way this time. I'm going to tack it in up front, make my tailpipe. I need to move my rear brake line because it's in my way. Might be able to just bend that up and out of my way. That would be too easy. Test fit my pipe. Put it right about there. See what happens. Maybe I'll get it right. Oh, golly, I'm hitting everything. Bend's right where it needs to be. Let's tack my muffler in place and then weld it up. Weld through primer my butt off. Do. Our tailpipe lined up. Straight out the sides, behind the rear tires. It's got that curb feeler look. We'll trim those off. There. Step trimming our tips. Now our exhaust is done. That's pretty cool. Now it's on to the little stuff. It takes all the weird amounts of time, which you don't think it's gonna. That's all right. It's part of the gig. Still hot. Nothing like a little death wheel action. Have to excuse the background noise. The tow truck's dropping one off out front. Old Buick to fix up, I guess. So I'm moving right along on this C10. We are done with the exhaust. The engine's installed. Trans is installed. Trans cooler lines are done. Power steering lines are done. I'm down to some of the little stuff. I need to wire up the cooling fans. And because these are a raised position header, the shift linkage is trying to take up the same space as the exhaust header. So I'm going to pull this shift linkage out and I'm going to modify it so that I can still use the factory column shifter. Costs a lot less money to modify the shifter or the shift linkage than it does to buy a new column. So that is our next step on the project. I'm not talking well this morning. So I'm going to wait for that tow truck to go away. Oh, new trainee. That's really loud. Bend it that way and that way to put it where I need it to be. I think that'll work. I'm moving this lever sideways 2.5 inches to clear my header. That'll be alright. So we'll put a gusset across here and weld it on. And bring the lever up to its kind of natural position like that. Probably clean that because it's gross. How did it do? I put some paint. Media blasted my linkage, put some paint on it yesterday. It's all nice and dry. Looks pretty good. Nobody's ever gonna see it. But I'm gonna go ahead, put this back in, make sure it clears my exhaust. And now it should work without hitting the exhaust. Got a new spring, new washer and bushing kit for it. That's what holds it into the frame. I think it'll work just fine. So I got these hose adapters. They've turned out looking pretty cool. for only 20 bucks or something from Amazon. It came in pretty quick. I got a short one here, which is for the smaller hose. I get the long one here, which is for the bigger hose. This is a factory AC truck, so we will be figuring out a way to hook the AC up, which is going to make this thing amazing. I should probably put that tab somewhere else. Probably put it down there. These alternators, they require a ground strap to be run from the ground tab to the intake or the cylinder head. I will be putting some redundant grounds on this. I haven't done that yet. But all my plumbing's pretty much done. My fuel lines are done, my power steering lines are done, my trans cooler lines are done, my trans cooler's done. I did all that in the last video. So now it's time to do that last like 15-20% and then drop a battery in it and the heat. I put my heater hose on the hoser. Some good quality Gates hose. Hook up to our heater core. I'm going to be changing out the receiver dryer and the orifice tube because we are changing this up to a 134 for our refrigerant. So a fresh dryer, fresh oil charge, and a slightly smaller, I think it's slightly smaller, orifice tube, which will give us nice cold AC. Gravity. They'll hold the water in, that's all I care about. Speaking of holding the water in, let's see if we have any sprinklers. I found a battery I can use in this for now. We'll get him a new battery when it's time. That'll work. My negative cable is, where I want to put it is blocked by bracketry. So I think I'm going to run it to the frame. And I'm going to run a jumper wire to the other side of the engine block off the frame, so I'll have very good negative ground path to the frame and to the engine block. Should work just fine. I've done that before. Helps me tuck my negative power cable down underneath and keep things tidy. I have a new dryer coming. We're going to try and figure out a nice fitment, clean look for that. That should be here tomorrow. My AC lines are going to be the last thing I worry about. I'm pretty close to getting this thing running. I need to pick up some distilled water, and some of my electrical wiring tools are at home, so I'm going to run home and grab those tonight after I mount this negative cable. The one I have is this guy, and he looks like he'll work just fine. He'll be able to go down nice and clean to the frame. We will probably get a longer cable so that we can run it down and tuck it. That lets me know what I need, and I will mount him to the frame right there because that will work. I actually have a coolant reservoir, which I'm going to put in right here. It's actually a factory one. It mounts to this raised spot here, and then I'll drill a hole here, and then I'll drill a hole there, and drill a hole there somewhere. Mount the tank there. That way we have our overflow tank. Just little bits. This really shouldn't take too long to wrap up. Next thing, I got to put power steering fluid in it. I might as well do that because if it leaks, I'll know in the morning. Which GM ATF is just power steering fluid. How will that come off? Oh my goodness, that's tight. So this repower is getting a lot of electrical upgrades while we do different stuff. These cooling fans I'm grounding at a chassis ground point on the frame, and you know, this truck's from 1987. When I pulled the bolt out, it was all rusty and gross, and the washer that I probably dropped on the ground already. Oh, there it is. You can see I cleaned it up. It was all rusty and crusty. These are a cutting washer. They cut into the metal to help get past the paint or anything that's on the surface. I just put these on the frame, and then I put my main ground on, and I'm going to put my cooling fan grounds on top of the normal chassis ground that goes there. And I clean these threads up, and I'm actually going to put a little dielectric grease on them. And these bolts are actually self-tappers, so when this was built at the factory, these cut threads into the frame, and that was your ground contact. So cleaning the corrosion and rust out of those is a good idea when you're redoing everything. Looks like I'm about out of dielectric. I'll have to get some more of that. A lot of folks are doing electronic conversions and adding cooling fans and all this stuff, and they wonder why the stuff doesn't work right. It's usually one of a couple things. Either the alternator you're using on the car doesn't have high enough capacity to supply the voltage needed. That's a pretty common failure. Or your grounds are horrible, or you have multiple powers feeding off of the same place, and it creates RF and other interferences to voltage. Basically, an excessive voltage drop on a EFI system can make it do all sorts of wacky stuff. The EFI systems do specify that you run your main powers and grounds directly from the battery. And a lot of people don't do that. They tap into wherever they tap into, and that's bad. I'm moving right along. I've got my battery cables in. I've got my redundant grounds done. I need to figure out which wire is my coolant wire, which I'm going to do that real quick because now I have battery power. Let's see if the starter works, shall we? Well, that's a good sign. Let's see if my ground spots are hot, so that's good. Let's get some fuel in this thing. Still need to do my brake line and my coolant overflow tank, but I can do those with this thing running. That would be amazing if I can get this thing running today. Let's drop some fuel down its gullet. This thing was dyno tuned, so the distributor should be set correctly. Tighten down my carb, pretty sure. Seems to be. My fuel line's tight. Let's get some fuel. Yeah, it's not going on the floor, that's good. So I'm getting really excited to fire this up, and I gotta remind myself to slow down because there's still things I need to do to prepare this for its initial startup. The power steering system was empty, so it has air in it, so I need to bleed my power steering system. I need to make sure my cooling system is bled, and I'm gonna actually crank the engine over to prime the engine oil, even though it was pre-run when it was dyno tuned. But first I'm going to bleed the power steering system I have the system filled, and then I'm going to turn the steering wheel lock to lock like 5 times, and then I'll check it, and if my fluid's dropped, I'll top it off. I'll turn it lock to lock with the engine off 5 times and make sure my fluid level doesn't drop anymore, and then my power steering will be good, and I won't cause damage from aerating the pump. Because when it's sitting there whining like it does when it's got air in it, it can actually damage the pump. So I'm gonna go ahead and bleed my power steering, then I'll top up my coolant, and then I'll crank it over, and then I'll prime it with fuel and try and fire it up. It dropped a little bit. We'll do another 5 turns. I got plenty of fluid in there. All right. I guess it's time to see what happens. Coolant's full, oil's full, trans has fluid in it. I don't know if it's full. I still need to mount my coolant tank. Oh, I still need to hook up the rest of my cooling fan. But I want to see if it'll fire, because I'm anxious. And I want to hear it make vroom vroom noises. So that's what we're going to do. Oops. Yep, I got power to my choke. That's exciting. Got oil pressure. Well, neither of my green wires are making my temperature gauge move, so I may have a gauge problem with the temperature. My oil pressure reads, and it lit up as soon as it fired. And my voltmeter reads, so that's good. You get the fuel system, get fuel into the fuel lines. Something doesn't sound right. Something doesn't sound right down there. I'm gonna bet it's the plastic dust shield. So I'm going to pull that off real quick, because I don't like listening to noises that shouldn't be there. It's hitting right there. The torque converter, no, torque converter bolts are out here. The counterweight on the flywheel's hitting right there. So we'll do something else for that. Well, that's pretty promising. All right, well, while I'm waiting, I'm going to hook up a couple more wires. This guy needs to go to key on power. So this is my signal wire. Sorry, this is my key on hot for my cooling fan relay. I'm going to run it into the cab. I'm going to run it off the fuse block. There's a raised spot right here in the fender. I'm going to drill a hole in that, and that's going to allow me to position my coolant overflow bottle, which goes right on that, and I can drill my hole there and there. Once I have my initial hole made, that would lead me to believe that these inner fender wells were replaced with new units. So I'm going to go ahead and drill those holes, get that mounted. That allows me to get my hose mounted to my cooling tank, to my radiator. And my wire, I've got a brake line that goes into a brake controller that we're not going to be using this for towing, at least not initially, so the brake controller is going to get tossed. And it's an old style that's hydraulically actuated, so it needs to go in the garbage anyway. I'm going to make a tab for this so that I can hold my heater hoses down, lock those down, that way the engine vibration gets met here at the fender instead of breaking the heater core tubes off. So lots of little bits, man, still a lot to do. It's probably big enough. What's one more? Ouch. That was dumb. This thing has come a long ways. So I'm dialing in my TV cable because my TV cable adjustment is critical to the longevity of this transmission. One major thing left to do after that, which is AC lines. So I'll see what I'm doing with those. Stick around. I'll show you how I'm going to hook the AC up on this thing.